So close and yet so far.
It's a fun way to begin a show.
Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show quick take, hot take of USA 1, Mexico 2. Yep. I'm Daryl Grove. I'm joined by Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Yep. Uno a dos, I guess, is what we're going to have to go with on this one.
It is, yeah. The way we do this, if you're a new listener, we are recording immediately after the final whistle of USA Mexico. We offer our sort of quick take, hot take, emotional review. It's almost like a little venting. And also our initial impressions of what happened. Later on, we'll release a full-length episode with what we think actually happened.
Yeah. And I'll say initially, like usually when this type of result happens, I'm like kind of okay with it, but a little angrier. Right now, I'm kind of numb a little bit. I think I'm not as angry as I'm going to be once we rewatch some stuff, because I think the calamity that was the first half is at this point an hour and change ago. So it's kind of faded. I think when we rewatch, I'm going to be a lot angrier.
All right, so we haven't really had time to talk this out, obviously, because we've been shouting at the TV and sort of at each other in good ways. But my general idea of what I just saw was 3-5-2 to start, or possibly a 3-4-3, but either way, it didn't work.
Nope.
We had to change it up. 4-4-2 didn't look great even for the rest of the first half. Second half, much better. We got Altidore and Wood working together a lot more. And the US basically just played with that sort of, I want to call it the Copa America intensity.
Yep.
It's like it's the US we saw against Costa Rica and Paraguay in the Copa America, where it wasn't tactically sound, but it was a lot of like, run fast, try hard, be first to the ball, and somehow that worked.
Yeah, and it worked, and it worked for a good long while, right up until when you play that type of game where you're at crazy high intensity levels. If you switch off for even a second, or if you get worn down and only make defensive subs and have a goalkeeper come off injured, so that's a substitution burned, your players get tired, your mental fatigue drifts a little bit, and in that situation, you can see the late goal. Right.
So, speaking of, should we start there? Because that's the thing we just saw.
Yeah.
Was the late goal.
Right.
Rafa Marquez.
It had to be Rafa.
It had to be Rafael Marquez, as John Strong said. Used his full name. So it's a Marquez header from a corner in, I believe, the 86th minute.
88th minute, I believe.
88th minute. Yep. I think our initial instinct was to blame Josie Altidore, because it looks like Altidore is the guy that should be marking him and doesn't step as the corner come in.
Yeah, and watching it quickly as the Mexican player celebrated for a very long time. It does look like, at first it's Josie Altidore, but upon review,
it could be John Brooks.
I think it's John Brooks, and I think it's one of those situations when Marquez is closer to Josie Altidore when he gets a head on it, and Josie Altidore is standing there with his hands on his hips when that corner comes in. So it's easy to blame Josie Altidore, but I think Josie Altidore is marking space, and it's supposed to be that kind of cutting off that near-driven ball.
Yep.
I think it's John Brooks who's supposed to mark Rafa Marquez. He kind of drops in behind Josie, leaving Rafa Marquez unmarked and wide open.
And I think it's almost as well, not to just lay blame on US players, right? It is more that I think Rafa Marquez did a smart thing, which is to put another man between you and the guy that's supposed to be marking you. Like, he deliberately lost John Brooks in the forest of Josie Altidore.
Yeah, and I think
sorry, this is just the quick take. We're going to rewatch this. There may be something different.
We are, but the quick viewing that I saw, what I got out of that was that John Brooks essentially knew that he'd lost his man, so he tried to drop into kind of zonal coverage to try to make the clearing header if need be when the ball came in.
I didn't see him say anything to Josie.
No.
That may be part of it, right?
But
normally you're like, Josie, you.
Yeah, and I will say that Brad Guzan screamed very loudly at Josie Altidore, or screamed very loudly at the gods, and Josie Altidore was like, that's not on me. Like, I did not see him be like, my bad, guys, my bad. It seemed a little more like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do.
Which implies that from the start of the play, it wasn't, hey, Josie, you mark Rafael Marquez.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. So, I mean, it's definitely on somebody for that.
Well, there's also, the corner comes from a free kick, right? It's a free kick Mexico have on the left that they cross in. I think Fabi Johnson heads behind. That's why it's a corner kick. It's Josie Altidore gives that initial free kick away when I think he didn't have to.
Yeah, I think so.
If I remember, Yedlin was being run at by Tecatito, I believe, and it was going the other direction. They turned him around. Altidore was helping him, and then Josie just fouled him.
Here's the thing, though. I'm not putting that on Josie Altidore. I'm putting that on Jurgen Klinsmann. That is on Jurgen Klinsmann.
Why is that?
Because you cannot play that type of game. Now I'm getting angry. You cannot play that type of game, which is high intensity. Tactics don't matter. Just get out there, run around, hit people, knock people around, knock them off their game. That will work for a while. But as we've seen, you can't then knock that off. And if you're trying to play, okay, we're going to make some defensive substitutions, everybody calm down a little bit, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You can't play super high intensity for 85 minutes and be like, okay, now everybody be smart. Like, no, you have built this monster, now you live with it.
It's like it's like if the US team was a dance club and everyone's like, do, and everyone's like full of energy.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and now slow dance.
Like, and now do,
That's not going to work.
Yeah, you're going to have people just hugging and dancing in circles.
Yeah, and so I think
they want to wave their glow sticks.
And so I think it starts with that, but then obviously, I mean, the first 26 minutes or so, it's just completely wrong. And
I'm really angry about that.
Yeah, and I think it's a 3-5-2. I would say it's close to that, or a 3-4-1-2 or something like that. Yeah. And we saw this. We were out to dinner. When we started seeing the lineups, we started seeing all these tweets and texts about like what's going on. What is Jurgen Klinsmann doing?
Yeah.
And we were planning to talk about it on the show yesterday, but but we kind of came to the conclusion that like he's not going to try something totally random. And we thought maybe he might do a little bit of tinkering.
Actually, I mean, so often like I host a show, so I sometimes drive the conversation where I want it to go. Mm-hmm. I had on my like things to do list on our preview talk about 3-5-2 because Mexico played through at the back, I thought there was a chance maybe we'd do the same. And also because we've had a couple of questions from listeners recently. I think it was Matt Hartman recently. I apologize if it wasn't.
John Adams definitely.
John Adams definitely. People keep asking, like, how come the US doesn't play this 3-5-2? We've got these wing backs, and then we can get the three midfielders that we want. Christian Pulisic could play the number 10 role, and then we can still play two strikers. And it was that whole thing where I understand why everybody thinks on paper it looks really good, but the first 26 minutes were all the evidence you need for why it doesn't work.
I think I disagree with you, but say why.
Go for it.
Will you say why it doesn't work, and then I'll give you my defense of why it could.
So two things, right? In one way, it doesn't work because it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of preparation. Okay. You can't just decide to do it like the week before and practice in it. You need to be more like Mexico, for example, who do it all the time, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is people I think when they do a 3-5-2 on paper, they see wing backs, and probably it's normally Johnson and Yedlin are the two they put down there. Today it ended up being Johnson and Chandler, and you think, it gets the best out of them, it gets them forward, but really you are pinning those guys out wide. They're not allowed to drift in field because they're the only people on that wing, and you don't have anyone overlapping with them. You know what I'm saying? You lose out on those 2-on-1 situations that you can create down the wings when you play a 3-5-2.
Okay, here's my disagreement with you.
Okay.
Number one, you say there's no overlapping. I think there could be overlapping, but
it's harder to do.
Well, fine, but that's not my argument. My point is that I think the second point that you just made still ties in with the first part. So you say, for example, Mexico do it all the time, but they don't necessarily. Sometimes they play a back four, sometimes they play back three, sometimes it's a 3-3-3-1.
Yeah.
And I think the point there is that Juan Carlos Osorio puts in that time. They work on tactics. He kind of has that precedent of like, we're going to do this, now we're going to move here, and like he gives everybody the instructions they need to execute a game plan.
Yeah.
So I think when Juan Carlos Osorio's Mexico play 3-5-2, you have specific people who are charged with making that overlapping run because it's something they've worked on. I think what this comes down to is I think the United States has the personnel to play a 3-5-2. I don't think they have the manager. I don't think he knows how to do the tactical preparation and put in that amount of work to basically have everybody know what they're doing. And I think it showed that you had those moments where you had exciting attacking play from the U.S. because they had numbers coming through the middle, but you also had consistently Mexico players on the ball with time and space or making runs that people weren't marking, and it just kept being a scramble from the U.S. because I think people weren't prepared and people weren't aware of what their responsibilities were up and down the pitch.
And normally with a 3-5-2 or maybe a 3-4-3, you can put it here, with a 3-5-2, the idea is you have numbers in the middle. That's the advantage of it, right? You can still have two forwards and you can still have numbers in the middle. Right? That's the great thing theoretically about it. But with the way we did it, Bradley and Jones were the two sort of holding central midfielders. Christian Pulisic, there was a big gap between those two and Christian Pulisic. Yeah. And he didn't look as free. Like you would think, okay, he's our most creative player maybe. You'd think, like playing for Dortmund, everyone's excited about him. You'd think he'd have more freedom in the middle. Turns out you don't because you can get lost.
Yeah.
Right?
Or
I saw him just running around a lot, not quite sure where he was supposed to be. He looked like someone who hadn't been given good instructions.
That's the thing. And that's why we do this show right here. As you've said previously, it's because we go with our first impression. And my first impression is that Christian Pulisic is a smart player. He's an intelligent player. He is well-drilled. He knows how to play this game. So to see him running all over the place, and sometimes he's in the middle, sometimes he's out wide, sometimes he's on the left, the right, sometimes he's high, sometimes he's back. It speaks to he's been told, like, run everywhere and cover all the ground and do stuff and not, like, stay here, play the ball, drop in here. Like, he hasn't gotten that instruction that he needs, and it ends with him being out of position.
Normally Thomas Tuchel downloads a whole set of instructions like Keanu in The Matrix. Right? I know karate now.
I think so. And so it to me, again, it's the problem of a lack of preparation.
Yep.
To the point where you said it jokingly, and then I think we slowly became like, yeah, maybe that's what's happening. Is in the 26th minute, I think it's when Tim Howard goes down, is when you see Jermaine Jones and Michael Bradley talking to Jurgen Klinsmann.
No, it's just before, I think.
Okay.
There's a break in play, but it's just before.
Yeah, I think it's the Guardado injury, maybe.
It's basically not long after Mexico scored.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
That you see them go over there, and there's this conversation, and that's when the United States switches back to a 4-4-2.
Yeah.
And your point, which I agree with, is that it seems more like it's Michael Bradley being like, this is not working. We need to change this.
Again, okay, so quick take, hot take. We've only seen this once on TV. We're going to go back and double check this is what happened. I see Jermaine Jones go over to Klinsmann. I see Jermaine Jones talking to Klinsmann. I see him gesture Michael Bradley over. I see Michael Bradley basically... this sounds harsh, but it looks like Michael Bradley is explaining how soccer works to Jurgen Klinsmann. And then the decision is made that, like, this isn't working. We're going to switch to a 4-4-2. And I really think it's those two saying, hey, boss, in quotes, this isn't working. We need to do something else. Please, can we change it?
Yeah, I mean, but that could also be that Jermaine Jones was closer. Klinsmann says, hey, let's change it. And then he calls over Michael Bradley to make that change.
Because I'm looking for maybe Klinsmann is like talking to Andy Herzog 2 minutes before, and they're like sketching something out.
See, this is why I don't think that happened. This is why I do think it might have been an on-the-field change rather than a on the touchline change, is that in the moments before that, in the few minutes before, Klinsmann was up, and you again said he does not look happy. He can tell this isn't working.
Yeah. He looked flustered.
But there's no sign that he's figuring it out. You don't see him like, Josie, come here, or Fabi, step there. It's just a lot of like standing there kind of during the headlights. Like, this is not what was supposed to happen. And then I made the joke that it kind of reminded me of, like, maybe he played FIFA last night. It was like, oh, we're good in a 3-5-2. Like, let's do like Yedlin, like his score went up, and so did like Fabian's, and I pushed him forward, and that was great. Let's do this. Wait, but that's not how the game went. I beat Mexico 5-0 in FIFA. Of course, it was on semi-pro, but whatever. I'm sure this will be fine. And so it just seemed a little bit like there wasn't that much of a game plan in place, other than maybe if it's not working, we'll drop to a 4-4-2. And Michael Bradley came over and said, it's not working, let's institute plan B.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, should we talk about the 2 goals while we're doing quick take, hot take? So while the US are in that 3 at the back system, I've forgotten who scored. Who scored? Oh, it's Leun.
Yeah.
Leun scores. And here's my memory of it, and it's coming back to me. Michael Bradley wins the ball from Gio dos Santos.
Sort of.
I'm sitting near the couch over here. I think I'm standing up, actually. And I yell, yes, Michael Bradley, brilliant, well done. And then I pause because he's still he's won the ball, but the ball still isn't won. And it looks like Gio dos Santos maybe just gets a toe and pokes it clear as Bradley is about to come away with it. Leun comes running in, takes a shot from the top of the box, deflects off Timmy Chandler, which is why Howard can't get to it.
Right. And Fernando Fiore, in the quick little bit of halftime we saw, was saying, like, Michael Bradley, you have to do something there. You either have to foul or get that ball clear. I think that's a massive oversimplification.
You don't have to foul at the top of your own D.
That's why I think that would be a terrible idea. We'd be equally livid if Michael Bradley had just... Because then that narrative becomes, like, Michael Bradley, you stepped, you kind of won the ball, Dos Santos is on the ground, it's probably going to be dangerous play. Why would you concede a free kick there? So that doesn't make sense. I do think Michael Bradley was kind of expecting this is going to be dangerous play. Dos Santos is down, kind of, and he's just kind of kicking the ball and trying to obstruct play. Maybe that's going to be a stoppage of play, except that then, as you said, there's a little touch clear that Leun is able to run on.
Actually, I think Bradley's trying to come away with it cleanly and launch a counter-attack, which is what he's supposed to be doing from that sort of deeper midfield role. It's just that he can't quite get it because Gio dos Santos, kind of clever, knows that if he can just get a toe in there, he can sort of restart that Mexico play.
And so this came like a couple minutes after Tim Howard's full stretch finger save tips it onto the post.
From Secatito, I believe.
Yeah. So then when we watch this, I guess, at normal speed, you're like, oh, that's kind of a soft goal to give up. And I agreed. You watch it again, you see that little bit of a touch from Chandler, and it becomes way harder of a save to make.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And then you have Timmy Howard go off with the pulled groin. Not quite right away. Tries to stay on, makes one more save, and we called this one. It was like, he's going to stay in, he's going to do one thing, he's going to be subbed out.
And I'm not thrilled with Howard staying in because that groin was obviously a bad situation, right? If we'd have been a little unlucky Chicharito could have scored that chance that Howard saves when he saves, then he immediately puts his hand up, I'm definitely injured.
Yeah. No, what I'm...
What if Chicharito had shot low and Howard has to stretch?
Well, yeah, I mean, then it's a problem. Or it shoots high and he has to, like, put the weight on it to get that pressure to, like, launch, and then it's a problem. But what I'm remembering is vaguely, it was like the U20 World Cup, or maybe it was the Olympic playoff against Colombia. I can't remember, but it was a similar thing where the goalkeeper like landed awkwardly. It was the U.S. goalkeeper.
It was Horvath, Olympic playoff against Colombia, second leg.
Yeah, and he like landed awkwardly and then kept trying to play, or maybe it was his head. I cannot remember what it was, but he like kept trying to play, and we were both like, "This is not a good idea. This is going to be bad." And like 5 or 10 minutes later, he was just like, "I can't do it," and just laid down. And it was the exact same thing where it's like, something is wrong. You're not going to be able to play through it. I appreciate that you want to stand there and be a warrior, but the reality is, even if he had stayed in there, there's no way he can take a goal kick again. So then you have to have a center back drop back. Then you can't play out of the back. You have to hoof it long. Now you have a gap through the middle. It's going to be a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, I think any momentum the US would have got from switching back to that 4-4-2 and being that sort of, all right, we're going to just run you over USA team that is weirdly kind of successful until you play Argentina.
Yeah.
Any momentum was lost with that Tim Howard team because of the emotional aspect of losing Tim Howard. That's how I felt it was. Like everyone was just kind of like, oh. You know what I mean?
It seemed like everybody was a little bit shell-shocked. You go into halftime, you come back out, then you get some... I think Stu Holden said it was from nothing, but it was some good fight from the U.S.
Yeah.
From good to play from Josie to Bobby Wood. And then in the celebrations, Josie said, "I told you." So I'm guessing they had some sort of plan, some sort of conversation about like, if we keep combining, we'll get something eventually.
So we haven't seen this again, but my memory of it is a John Brooks ball out of the back that Josie kind of rolls a defender. And so Josie, basically what I'm trying to get at is Josie has come deep. Sorry, I'm getting salivary over here. Josie has come deep, manages to turn, Wood goes long, manages to put Wood through. Right? And so it's that thing of that strike partnership finally working because we know Josie's better coming deeper than Bobby Wood, and Bobby Wood's better in behind than Josie Altidore. So it finally all kind of clicked.
Yep. And then, it's good hold-up play from Bobby Wood to, like, he does that little fake to make the defenders bite. To drive. Is it Talavera? I can't even remember who started in goal because he was not troubled very much. Talavera bites a little bit. That's how Bobby Wood is then able to get that shot off. I think there's a deflection and a partial save, but it's in the back of the net. It was 1-1. Finishes 2-1 to Mexico.
But then between that goal and Rafa Marquez's header, the US were kind of magnificent. I believe I said to you at some point, this is a reminder, like, this is why these players are sometimes your heroes, right? Because we saw, like, Jermaine Jones step in and winning things, Bradley doing the same, Pulisic winning the ball back and, like, beating 3 people on the dribble.
And then getting fouled, and then Josie Altidore, like, retaliating against Mexico for Christian Pulisic.
Yeah. I was in love with this team for, like, 30 minutes or so.
But again, that's sort of, like, I feel like that's passion overriding logic. And in the end, I think
the team.
Yes, but I think in that situation, it's sort of like, yeah, we're doing it, yeah, we're winning, we're getting physical, we're knocking them around. But that still papers over a lot of problems that I think were there that did not need to be there. But it's a poor setup and a poor plan and approach to this game.
Yeah.
And I think you see what happens when you have that against this team like Mexico, who are so deep and so talented, and I would say so well coached by Juan Carlos Osorio.
Yeah, Klinsmann out-coached. Definitely in the first 25 minutes, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And even the fact that, Juan Carlos Osorio, yes, Timmy Howard goes off with injury. Mexico, by halftime, have made 2 substitutions because of injury.
Yeah.
So, they're having to deal with their own situations where they're probably not making the substitutions they would have liked to have made. They still dealt with it. They still rolled with it. They still found a way to win.
All right, shall we end it there? We'll rewatch and come back with the longer review later.
Sounds good to me.
This has been your quick take, hot take. Oh, maybe... I want to say maybe my favourite moment from the night is your favourite moment from the night.
Absolutely.
It's the image you tweeted out at the start of all the players in a big sort of... It was 2 lines, all hugging, all intermingled. Perfect sort of response to anyone who was thinking there was any sort of Mexico-America drama or split.
And again, we haven't watched any replays. We haven't heard much about this. If I had to bet money, I'd say that was not a planned thing. I would say that was Michael Bradley, would be my guess.
Really?
Michael Bradley is the one who it was his idea to wear the armband. When he wore the rainbow armband in support of Orlando. And I think he was willing to pay the fine himself to make that happen.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if he went over to Marquez or Chicharito or somebody and said, like, hey, we want to do this before the game. We want this picture.
Yeah.
And then it happened. Because it didn't feel like some sort of... It felt more genuine than a FIFA, hey, everybody put your arms around each other and everybody say, good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows?
All right, so we've been Total Soccer Show for now. We'll be back later on with our longer review. Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time for a quick take, hot take with me.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again later on.